Hello, and welcome to another episode of Leader Generation brought to you by ModApp. I'm your host, Tessa Burg, and today I am once again joined by John Arnold, Head of Strategic CRM Advisory at Creatio. And he is joining us from on the road where thousands of people around the world are registering for Creatio's no code events. Today, we're going to dive into a study that Creatio recently did on the state of AI agents and no code. John, thanks so much for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me back. It's always great to talk to you, and the folks at ModUp are awesome, so I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, and before we got on this call, I was saying, man, this report is packed with so many super facts that are really telling of where AI agents and no code are going.
Yeah, it is a great survey. So, Creatio is really a rocket ship right now, and we're, growing, and like you said, these events are super packed with people interested in AI and no code, and it's a great topic, and there's a lot of mystery around it, and people are asking a lot of questions. And so, we took a look at our contact database and all of the customers that we serve, and we realized, we're sitting on top of this incredibly innovative group of businesses and business decision makers who are leading this charge, and they're not afraid to, break things and try new things and innovate and push the envelope. And that's true of any, digital transformation or anything that happens in the marketplace. I remember in my early days, I started my career in email marketing, and back then, you had an email, and then you could suddenly you could figure out who clicked on the link in the email, and nobody knew what to do with that. The technology will tell you who clicked on the link, but it's like, okay, great. Now what do I do? Do I send them another email? Do I follow up with, like all these best practices emerge. So when no code and AI, really started to get traction in these companies, the same questions are being asked. What do we actually do, and what are the best practices, and what are the new ways of working? And everything is really being reimagined right now. So we embarked on this survey to really get a pulse of what are the innovators doing, what are the people doing that are actually the practitioners who are implementing AI and no code and getting those business results. Because you read the headlines and you see all kinds of different takes on the news of AI, it's a bubble, or nobody's getting any ROI, or,
Mhm.
it's responsible for a lot of layoffs and people are getting replaced by robots. And, that's all a bunch of hype. And we wanted to get down to the truth. What are practitioners doing with AI and no code? What kinds of results are they getting? Where are they experimenting? Where are they getting the best, deployments, and what decisions are they making? What challenges are they struggling with? And we were very glad to get 564 responses. It's a good survey. It's a good sample size. The company sizes are everything from 10,000 plus employees. That's about 10% of the audience, all the way down to the 50 to 249 employees. And we have some great industry data. Financial services, technology, professional services, manufacturing are in that group. And it's a global survey, so it's not just all US based, but the audience is distributed all over the world. So really, really great survey. I'm glad you found some time to digest it. And I know, yeah, you said there's a lot of facts in there, and there's is great information.
Yeah, and I think one of the key themes that really jumped out to me when you say you're sitting on a mountain of people who are leading an innovation, because it's always a safe bet to go with the known platforms. They always used to say, like, you won't get fired, if you hire IBM. Like, if you make those decisions, then your job is safe. But the truth is, smaller companies are at an advantage right now because they can move faster. And I can't believe you had 10% with over 10,000 employees. I mean, those are some truly forward-thinking companies. And your report reveals that over nearly half, 45% of decision makers believe this is already a board level topic, where, historically in some big companies, the board is where innovation goes to die. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about, how is Creatio making that impact at the board and moving beyond just being, hey, this is something we're going to pilot, into this is something that enterprise wide will lead to full transformation potential.
Yeah, well, there were really three big themes that came out of the survey, and I'm sure we'll get into all three of those. And you're touching on the first one, which is this idea that agentic AI is a strategy level, executive boardroom priority. It's not just something that's getting pushed down to the front line or the tactics in the business. And companies are looking at the way we put it in the report is the leaders are moving from AI versed to AI first, and AI is taking front and center because of its ability not only to just transform processes and sort of thinking about it from an efficiency point of view, but also because AI plus people is really where this is all going, right? So, what can you do to reimagine the roles that you have in your organization when everyone has access to AI? And the way I introduce this when I speak about this at the conferences is that, a lot of people in the room, in fact, sometimes I'll speak to a conference and I'll ask them, is there anybody in the room who remembers what it was like to go to work with no computers? And there's always a few people in the room who are still around that, remember what it was like. There's no computers in the office at all. And then how about when if you remember when there were no laptops, you couldn't bring your work home with you because there was no such thing as a laptop. And then what about, before there was a mobile device that you could now, take a computer and put it in your pocket. And, lots of people raise their hands for that. But all of us, pretty much, unless this is your very first job ever, everyone's going to remember what it was like to go to the office and there was no AI. There were no AI agents, right? There was no AI agent doing some work behind the scenes or working alongside you. And so that's a new paradigm and a new tool that everybody has access to that they didn't have before. And it's just another way to reimagine the work. Before computers, people did a lot of things with paper and whiteboards and all kinds of stuff, and that all went away, and now you do it on a computer. And with AI and AI agents, it's similar to that. So it's very transformational, and that's why it's making it into the boardroom because it's not just about the technology. This just isn't just a CTO decision or a CIO decision. It's really a board level decision because it affects the way that everybody is going to be doing the work. Um, so 45% in the survey said that AI agents are already a boardroom topic, and 38% said that it's very likely in the next 12 months. So, and that's the reason why, is it's just such a big topic. It's so transformational. It definitely deserves board level oversight.
Yeah, I agree. And I think another thing that you said in there that's just very telling on where this is going is that AI agents is not itself a strategy, that you're really looking at what are the big challenges that can be solved with a platform like Creatio, with AI, and how does that lead to ROI? And C levels are accepting that AI is a part of solving those challenges, but it's not the whole pie. They also need people. In fact, 84% of the leaders said it's going to augment the teams, but this introduces something new for boards to invest in, which is upskilling and reskilling. And the report talks about this generalist mindset and someone who can manage a broader set of disciplines. How, when businesses are thinking about their overall vision and where they need to invest next, how are they approaching that upskilling and reskilling of their existing force? Because 84% thing is going to augment is completely counter, I think, to the headlines that we hear every day. So they're, it's interesting to have this stat and kind of get inside the mind and be like, huh, so then, what are they planning for the workforce?
Yeah, I think there's a big divide between the people who are trying to forecast, or I guess hypothesize about what AI is going to do in the workplace and the people who are actually in the trenches doing the work and getting the work done. And there's also a kind of a divide between really, really big companies and medium-sized companies as well. So in really, really big companies, there's maybe always some inefficiencies and excess going on, and some of that can be solved with AI. And then, executives make some sort of decision around headcount. They need to reduce the headcount and they can't figure out a way to redeploy those people that were, their jobs are sort of being automated away and that kind of thing. So I think that the headlines are dominated by some of that big company thinking. But reality seems to be more like the practitioners and the leaders who are actually getting the ROI from this are not just, trying to save money. They're trying to apply AI to grow the business. And when you apply that kind of thinking and you're like, hey, I want AI to grow the business, we're going to hire more people. Those roles may be different than they were in the past. But what we want is people using AI and getting the benefit of that AI plus people working together. So the made up of that 84% that you mentioned, there's, let's start with the 11%. 11% say that it's likely to reduce their headcount. So that's just, there are people who are saying, yeah, I'm gonna reduce headcount with AI, but that's by far the smallest number. 48% say that they see AI as a way to augment teams. So their people are using AI. AI is working alongside them and they're being more productive. They're able to focus more on relationships. They're able to let go of some of the administrative tasks that were burdening them and move on to, I guess you could say, higher level things like the things that humans do really well, right? Relate to people and think creatively and collaborate and communicate and participate on teams and come up with new ideas and take risks. All of those things are things that humans can do better than AI. And when you put AI and humans together, you get the best of both of those things. And then 28% see an opportunity for growth in their current staff. So AI is a way for them to upskill or to get more out of that role and maybe to make that role more productive, but also move into other territory where there's gaps in the organization or they're not getting good coverage, and they're able to actually up level people and give them sort of a growth path because they're able to use AI and sort of accelerate their potential. And then 8% feel like it's going to create new roles. So new roles, that they never had before. They have to reimagine those job roles and those job descriptions. And when you add AI to the equation, you can hire all kinds of new people to do things that maybe you didn't even do before at all. So with all that, that's how you get to the 84%. Yeah, it is a very different mindset than the headlines. I think the headlines, the story almost writes itself. The robots are coming for our jobs, and Amazon laid off a bunch of people. It must be because of AI. And again, there's a little bit of truth to that. They probably automated some things that they didn't need as many people for, but they're going to redeploy that in other ways and bring back new roles with slightly different job descriptions that involve AI because that's how they're going to grow the business from there.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like we're seeing this ourselves, in our own business and with clients that I was surprised by the 8% saying there's new roles. I see so many new roles opening up. At the same time, the job market for traditional roles just my observation, looks terrible. I see more open to network flags on people's profiles than I'm used to seeing. So I think when the report really calls out um, a clear description of where you want to move, if you want to future-proof your job, which is that generalist mindset, can you solve problems? And maybe you're in a role that is going to be automated away at an enterprise business, but that doesn't take away the deep expertise and the learnings that you got in doing that role for however long you did it. Like you have industry knowledge, you have the capacity to be creative. And when smaller companies, and I do think with the ability to create, to make, to develop getting easier and easier, there will be this boon in entrepreneurship and in smaller companies. There might be like this transfer of people going from large companies and highly specific roles, which I think are at the biggest risk of being automated away, to these more general roles at smaller companies that are solving specific challenges, but they don't have specific roles for each person. So I think about this all the time is we are also looking at like how do we upskill, reskill? How do we test if people can be strategic and help solve big challenges? And while everyone else is super scared about, losing their job, I've honestly never worked as much as I'm working right now and flying around the country because I think the positive side is there are very big challenges to be solved, and those can only be solved by humans and building relationships and listening and asking the right questions of your clients and their customers and your partners.
Yeah, I think it's really good for people to understand that, the way a company grows is usually because the people inside the company find opportunities to make a difference, and their work contributes to something that grows the business. So you look out across the business, and I guess in some big companies maybe you wait for somebody to tell you what to do, in some divisions of the company, and you're not very ambitious or something because you're just in a large corporate sort of hierarchy or something. But in ambitious companies that are growth companies, have a growth mindset, they rely on people to find those opportunities and create new ways of growing. And if you decide to take that mindset as an individual contributor, and you start using AI according to your company's policies, whatever that is, and you use it to find those opportunities, the doors are open. There's many open doors for people who want to find new ways to grow the business. And of course, you can't just program the AI to go do a bunch of stuff. That's where people come into play, because in order to get things done in an organization, you have to get approvals, and you have to get people to buy into the idea, and you have to get it funded, and you have to get people to work together, and have teamwork, and get behind the initiative, and shape the idea and make sure that it's going to work, and all of that human effort that's involved in launching a new business, or trying to enter a new market, or trying something new that hasn't been done before to beat the competitors. All that has to be human plus AI. And when you have AI just doing that, it doesn't do a good job because it can't do the human part. And if you just have humans do it, you might fall behind, because the people who have AI can accelerate the pace of that greatly, and sort of be first to market. So again, it's back to, that's the reason why these practitioners are saying, it's not about AI replacing people. It's really about people and AI working alongside of each other.
Yeah, I think that problem solving and that growth mindset really becomes the fuel for what generates revenue for the company. And the report cites that you're actually seeing more leaders prioritize those customer facing functions. So everyone listening to this podcast, or most, are in one of those roles. They're in sales, they're in marketing, they're in service, and these areas are, one, what are feeling like the most impacted, but also two, where there's the most opportunity for revenue, and getting creative about how do you serve your customers, show up for them differently, um, in new ways. What are you seeing the clients, or what themes emerged on ways that companies, as they're freeing up time and they're focusing on sales, marketing, and service, what are some of the new ways that they are redeploying that creative problem solving, using AI to not just drive efficiency, but to fuel that growth equation?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned service sales and marketing, and those customer facing roles, because that's where we see the mindset of every company, right? Everybody is in some degree, focused on the customer. And, there's the old saying that you either work in sales or you work for somebody who does, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of have to get to the point of selling, and growing the business with the customer in mind. And so think about all the things that are in the way of that. If you're a frontline sales or marketing or service person or a manager, and all of the hoops that you have to jump through, all of the workarounds, all of the different tasks that weigh you down and bog you down in details, so that you take away your focus from the customer. And a lot of times sales and service and marketing fight through that to get the results, and the results speak for themselves, right? You either grow the business or you don't. And those frontline workers are often on the hook despite all of the baggage that they carry with them into the day to day. And when you start to deploy AI agents around that, or you start to ask those practitioners, where would you like to see AI deployed? And we did that in the survey. One of the questions was, what's one task or workflow that you'd like to see fully handled by an AI agent in the next 12 months? And we did a little word cloud around that. And the words that kept on popping up were sales, service, marketing, customer, CRM, and so a lot of the places where people hope that they can see some automation or some workflow help in the AI agents is in that frontline sales, marketing, service, or customer success. So we went a little bit further in diving into that and found that, in fact, the companies that are successful deploying AI are deploying AI agents where frontline growth happens. So while 23% are deploying AI agents somewhere in the IT operations side, so like the ITSM world where they're automating workflows in the back office, in the IT space, 46% are deploying AI agents in sales, marketing, service, and customer success combined. And what it's doing is it's in fact, kind of realizing that dream that all these frontline workers have that, stop bogging me down in all of this extra work that doesn't touch the customer, but just makes it harder for me to do that job. And it's freeing them up. So it's not taking away time that they should be spending, and all of a sudden, you don't need those people anymore. It's allowing them to, instead of doing all those workarounds and being bogged down, it's allowing them to spend that time focusing on those relationships and either building those relationships or deepening those relationships with more time, more energy, more focus, and allowing them to really think creatively about those relationships, to customize those relationships, to personalize the experiences. And ultimately, that's going to lead to more revenue and more growth. So on the one hand, you can deploy AI with an efficiency mindset, and you're just going to keep cutting and cutting and cutting, but that's not a way to grow a business. The way to grow a business is to reinvent that customer experience and really realize some of the promises that maybe your technology was making in the past, because the technology would say, yeah, if you do this, you're going to have better customer experiences or more personalized experiences, and that's going to grow your business. But then the technology is hard to learn, or it doesn't quite do what you need it to do, or it doesn't adapt to your business. And AI agents and no code are really changing that dynamic because they're able to adapt and they're able to learn how we work. Instead of learning the software, the software learns what you need and adapts. And that's making that whole thing possible.
Yeah, I think we've all had that experience where we license a platform for a really specific big reason. And we go through this huge process to get the budget approved, to get all the investment and the time it's going to take to execute it approved, only to be super disappointed when it only works about a fraction of the percent that we expected. And
Yeah.
that leads into, we talked about the big theme of leadership and at the board level. We talked a lot about augmentation, but the other big theme is this no code with AI to abstract complexity and adapt to the user. And that's very different than how platforms have functioned in the past. And it is meant to help increase level of success and help marketers realize the benefits and outcomes of really what they've always wanted to do. Can you tell us a little bit more about like what is meant by no code platforms sort of adapting to the user in order to democratize access to automation?
Yeah. So for the uninitiated, when we say no code, let's just talk about that really quick and what that means. So, there are pro code platforms for professional developers that, help them to create code and to build applications. And then there are also low code platforms where, really also marketed for professional developers or maybe junior developers that allow them to build applications without knowing or without needing all of the code from scratch. You can kind of access the code and create code with AI or with the no code, with the low code features and functionality. So low code and pro code platforms are really for those professional developers to accelerate the pace of building applications. But no code is something completely different, which is really about building applications without any coding whatsoever, no need to access the code at all. And so, think about, let's say, a marketer who wants to create a case study, and you go into the system and you start to pull some information about the customer, and then you need some ROI statistics, and you need a story, and you need the company's logo, and you kind of want to assemble this whole case study. And imagine that instead of just doing one-off case studies, you're able to build an application that will create case studies out of all of the moving parts. And when you go in to log into that application, you're able to assemble a case study in a really small amount of time. So that would be an example of like a custom application that you could build with no code. And theoretically anyway, the marketer could go ahead and build that application themselves. And maybe there's some IT oversight, or IT has a center of excellence with some best practices and policies and some steps in how to do it. Or maybe IT still does it, but they're able to do it really, really fast, and they can do more of those requests because the no code platform just takes away all that complexity. So start with that idea of no code and building applications that you need to make yourself more productive. Then you add AI to that equation, and now you're building not only applications, but also AI agents with no code whatsoever. So just natural language is your tool. The computers have learned to speak English, or whatever language your large language model supports. And you're able to build applications and AI agents that can do all kinds of things. And also those AI agents learn the way that we work. So you no longer have to learn how to use the software, but the software learns you and how the ways that you work. So the
Yeah.
whole idea of AI and no code together, is really probably one of the most transformational trends that we see in business growth today.
Yeah, and it keeps, what we talked about earlier, what are marketers, sales people, and service going to be doing? And it's using no code platforms to bring a visual, to bring an experience of how they want to solve a problem to life. And the faster you can get to that visual and showing people what the outcomes and benefits actually look like, the faster you get to real feedback and to iterating on how to take that solution to market. Uh,
Yeah, and by the way, no code is not all that new. It's really already a mainstream business capability. So about a third of these business and technology decision makers that we surveyed said that they use either low code or no code platforms enterprise wide across the majority of their departments. And another 32% say some of their departments use those tools. So the total amount that's in use is around 2/3 of companies have no code or low code deployed already.
Yeah, and again, those are hallmarks of very forward-thinking companies. And I feel like for any listeners that are still trying to get that strategic position in the boardroom or with their senior leadership as to leading change programs, transformation programs that evolve the way the company goes to market and serves their customers, you know, be if they today don't have low code and no code platforms in place, then the stats in this report are perfect to cite and say, we want to be one of the leading forward thinking companies. And these are the types of technologies and the types of processes and skills we need to be investing in to get there. Uh, One thing that comes up whenever you talk to senior leaders and you want to start a new AI initiative is the blockers. Like, oh, well, our data's all over the place. We don't have anyone who has time or capacity. We might have to scrap this whole thing. Like, I've heard all of it, but a lot of it comes down to I don't think we collected the right data. I don't think our data is where it needs to be. And it is a major blocker. Data quality is a huge issue. But this report cites that no code applications can actually help there as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about how those blockers can be resolved with no code and leveraging AI?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty common, I would say, objection, I guess, to moving to an AI or no code world is the data quality or the system integration challenges that exist with that. And And yeah, that's 51% of the study, by the way, said that one of their biggest barriers to AI adoption or the adoption of AI agents is data quality or system integration. So it's definitely there. But yes, I do agree with you. It's an opportunity for those organizations to think differently about those challenges because AI agents, while they are in fact, technically it's software or it's an application in and of itself, it acts very differently, right? So it actually is able to adapt. It is actually able to solve some of those issues and sort of actually repair some of the things that are wrong in the first place. So instead of thinking about I can't deploy AI agents because my data doesn't work, think about well I have to deploy AI agents because my data doesn't work. So you have to flip that on its head and think about ways that you can actually use AI to solve some of those challenges. Some of the other challenges that came up in the study, by the way, are regulatory or security or legal concerns. So, if you're in a regulated industry or an industry that has a lot of security or legal concerns, that's definitely coming up. And again, AI can help with that. AI agents can actually lock down some of your regulatory issues or help reduce the time involved in audits or more thoroughly make recommendations around security or legal concerns, or assist your legal or your chief privacy officer with, making sure that the guidelines that the company has are being followed across the organization. So there's a lot of ways that you can, again, deploy and not just use that as a barrier, but as an opportunity to fix some of that. The survey also cites a lack of internal expertise. So that's what we were talking about earlier in this session, where these are all new practices and the best practices haven't really been established yet. So you have to kind of be willing to try new things and innovate. And have to look to the experts that are in this world trying it and try to learn from what everybody else is doing. Lack of training and enablement, kind of along those lines. And then just change management. There's a lot of change that is happening, and people's jobs are changing, their tools are changing, the way they think about being productive is changing, and all of those things are difficult for people to embrace.
Yeah, that theme comes up over and over again. And I'm curious, this was a global study. What were some of the differences and themes or confidence in regards to AI uh, around the world?
Yeah, they're pretty similar actually. I know we just released a United Kingdom version of the report, so there's just the UK data sliced out of that. And one of the things we found in that study is that the UK is much more confident in deploying AI agents. So that's interesting. And but what you really see is that there's a lot of confidence across the globe. So as you'd expect, and this is true with a lot of other new technologies. Europe and North America sort of see the most confidence in deploying new things and trying new things, and Asia Pacific, Latin America, just slightly behind in terms of adoption of AI agents, but not that far behind, right? So there's lots of companies in all regions of the world that are on the cutting edge, that are pushing the envelope and trying new things and getting great results.
Well, John, we are at time. This was a very interesting conversation. I hope that it built a lot of confidence in our listeners who are trying to lead and pilot transformation at their companies to better serve their customers as well as grow. Is there anything that you want to add before we leave about the study or about Creatio that listeners should know before the episode ends?
Yeah, I would just, I guess, encourage everyone to, get the study, think through it with your team, you know, have that perfect mindset of this is about AI plus people. This is not about just AI. And, AI is not going to make our organizations less human. We're
Mhm.
still going to have the human element, and that's the most important thing. So, be the champion of that voice in the organization. It's AI plus people, not only AI.
Love it. Well, thank you again for joining us. And if listeners want to hear more episodes of Leader Generation, you can find them at modop.com. That's modop.com under the Vanguardian or modop.com/podcast. And you can find John on LinkedIn. So John is at Creatio or visit Creatio's website at creatio.com. And John, enjoy your travels around the world, and I hope you have fun meeting people and getting the opportunity to talk more AI and human augmentation.
Yeah, great to talk to you again. Have a great rest of the week.
You too.